When I go to my inner room, here are some of the feelings I have. Lonely, unfairly treated, insecure. I just want to give up. What's the use? Terribly disappointed with myself or disappointed with others. Working with an individual recently who's carrying some really deep resentment. A father that just didn't do anything to raise him as a son. He was just an absent father. So he carries a tremendous disappointment from what he didn't get from his dad. And then I can get pretty angry in my inner room. And some of the harshest, most damaging conversations we probably have ever had is when both parties are speaking from their inner rooms. And those are the ones where things are said that, oh, I wish I'd never said that. I wish I could take that back. Because in my anger, deep in my inner room anger, I spoke something that really hurt, really did damage. So be very careful. If you're in your inner room, okay, but don't try to talk things out while you're there, because it's not going to go well. I've been doing this for 4 decades now, working with people in a variety of settings, and I've never, ever had a couple resolve anything when they talked about it in anger. And it's probably the biggest mistake a lot of counselors and therapists make working with couples is they don't appreciate how much the anger is sabotaging any attempts to repair or build a relationship. I tell my students, definitely make sure that before you start building something into a relationship, you get the anger out. The anger is like a foundation that's cracked or falling apart. Before you can do any repairs to the building, you have to dig out the bad foundation. And that's what we do when we get the anger out of there. It's hard work, it's delicate work, but it's essential to make sure that we get the anger out before we start doing anything constructive to build, because the anger will always flare up. It'll just take a comment and everything we've been working on is suddenly collapses because the anger just overtakes the person. So we want to be careful with those emotions that come up, to get stirred up in the inner room. And there are many more. Shame, guilt, and I'll invite you to come up with a lot of them. Maybe you can think of some in your own experience of being in the inner room. And think about maybe you're in a relationship, and can you tell when that other person goes to his or her inner room? And you think about what are some of the indicators that they're in their inner room. And a couple of them might be they stop talking, or they start talking more intensely with a raised voice. Those are indicators for you that at this point, if you continue to try to talk through something, it's not going to go well. You don't want to chase them if they're pouting, and you don't want to be the recipient of them throwing up all over you with their anger and all the negativity. And so it's okay to pause, say, you know what, I value and respect this relationship too much to let this happen. So I don't want to just not come back to it, but let's pause it and set a time when we can come back. And maybe you'll be out of your inner room, maybe I'll be out of my inner room, and we can talk about it in a way that's constructive. So some of the feelings I have when I go to this place. The next thing is, what do I do there? Well, I can say one thing that I learned from my marriage and Sue not chasing me is that pouting alone is pretty miserable. It's not fun. If I'm in my inner room and I'm pouting and Sue's not chasing me, I don't like that. I'd rather her chase me. But we decided that's not going to work. So What do I do there? I fill up on sadness. I replay the hurts. Get frustrated with what's wrong with me, my family. Why don't I have better friends? What about my school? It's just filled with cliques. My workplace is run by people who don't have a clue. I have all sorts of frustrations that I live with, and they just start playing. They start going over and over. And that's a warning sign to us that we're either entering or in the inner room. I had one person say, I don't go there. In fact, I've had several people tell me over the years, I don't go to my inner room, I live there. And I'm thinking, no wonder you're depressed. No wonder you're so discouraged. You're living in this place of constant negativity. I remind myself that others can't be trusted. I've been hurt, I've been burned, and I'm telling myself, I'm not going to let anyone else get that close. You can't trust people. I might fantasize about escaping this relationship or this way of living by becoming very, very successful and letting people know what they missed in me. They thought I didn't have anything, now I'll show them. I call that sort of the toxic fuel that drives us to accomplish things. Some of the most important works in different fields have been by people who lived in extreme conditions of putting everything into whatever it is they were doing, which is great unless it's being driven by a toxic fuel of I'll show you that I can amount to something. You told me I was a loser. You were sorry I was ever born. You rejected me for all these jobs. I didn't get into these choice schools, whatever it may be. I'll show you, and I'll push myself to the extreme. And sometimes I can accomplish wonderful things, but a toxic fuel catches up to me, and eventually everything turns south, everything sours, and I begin to implode because I've been driven by a fuel that much like a cancer, destroys me. What's the alternative, you might ask? Well, I think we can still be driven, but be driven by that love that we got in Station 1, the love of God that allows us to truly love ourselves and others, which is the first and second commandment, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. That's what drives us, hopefully. What else do I do while I'm in this inner room? Sometimes I wait till someone comes and rescues me. And there are a lot of rescuers out there looking for someone to rescue. And it works for a while, but typically doesn't last. And then sometimes I can even manipulate people into meeting my needs while I'm in my inner room. And if you treat me this way, then I'll come out. If you give me this or don't do this, then I'll honor you with my presence. So you can see that the things that go on in this place, none of it's good. None of it has anything that's going to restore me or allow me to connect well with others. It's just tearing me down, which is a really good thing to remember, that any message that I'm hearing from others or giving myself that is tearing me down, that is overwhelming me with guilt and condemnation, is not of God. It's of an old nature. It's of a spiritual attack of trying to destroy me. Anything that is of Christ, anything that is given to me, even the things that I need to work on that are hard, that message to me is always for restoration and building me up. If you think about even the harshest prophetic messages that some of the prophets in Scripture pronounced, They were harsh, but they were always designed to restore and build up the nation and the people. If it's not restoring and building up, then it's not of God, and therefore I'm going to take it captive or I'm going to dismiss it. I don't want it in the mix. So it's just a way of thinking about some of the negativity that we live with that tears us down when really, if it's for our benefit from God or from others, it'll be there to restore us and build us up. Okay, so what's the next thing? Some of the types of responses that come from this toxic fuel I mentioned in the inner room. I make plans to stay very busy. And once again, this term, the anesthesia of busyness, and that's so I don't have to deal with things.